So our next project is a very bright, fun, and happy project. This is our ticker tape parade. It's using Cue the Confetti from Hoffman Fabrics. And we have two projects with this. This is the first one. The second one has applique on it, and we'll do the video on that one as well. But I want to share the collection with you because I love bright and fun fabrics, and this is right up our alley. So it came with large balloons, bunches of balloons. These are little tiny gumballs. They're just the cutest gumballs. Then we have actually the confetti in white and in black. And then for the coordinates, we have these wonderful, rich, bright batiks, tonal and speckle. And these were just so fun to work with. I wanted to design a quilt that would be fun and easy, and I kept the shapes fairly simplistic to this, and I made it also a row by row quilt versus a quilt with borders and everything. So to utilize these big fat balloons, we did 2 full strips of those, and then we have the little balloons peeking out. Then we just do 4 patches, quarter square triangles, half square triangles with some setting triangles. And that's it. So we're going to get this one cut and get this one started. Alright, so we have everything cut, and these are Alphabitties. We sell these on our website. I put a hole punch through them with a safety pin, and they label which fabrics are H and A and B. I keep them in this super cute little tin. It's a bento box tin, just sharing it. But there's numbers and there's letters, and I have 2 sets so that when I have 2 projects going, I have enough to label them. You can also use little stickers. You saw me peeling some of those off in the cutting videos. They're little 1/2-inch stickers. You can put the letters on and use the stickers. So either way, just label it as you cut it. And we are now ready to get started on making the blocks. So the first thing we're going to do is a nice easy 4 patches, and then we go to 1/4 square triangles, 1/2 square triangles, and then bias triangles. So we'll cover all of those in the video, and then we'll assemble it. So on to the next step. So we're ready to start. We've got all our pieces cut for our ticker tape parade, and this is using Cue the Confetti from Halfman Fabrics. And the first thing we need to do is we need to make the 9 patch blocks that look like this. So first we sew, let's not get burned here, we sew a yellow to a white and a pink to a white, and then these I press both towards the color away from the background. And then we look at the picture. Make sure you look at your pattern picture, though you could rotate these, so I really don't know if there's a wrong way to sew it. But if you look at the picture, the red is in the upper right and the yellow is in the lower left. So then we would put these 2 together and sew them. And because we press towards the color, we can just use our thumb to kind of roll the 2 seams together, and they'll nest. That'll help you get a nice sharp point there, and you won't have background going into the other seam. So once we do that, we have it sewn, and now we need to press it. Now you could press it all in one direction, and the way they go in the quilt, you're going to do blue, you're going to do green like that, and you're going to do pink like that. So you could press all of these up and all of these down, and then that seam will nest in between. Or you could, so you could have it so the yellow presses up and the pink presses down by just flipping it on the back, taking your thumb and separating that middle seam, and that there will let that one go up and this one go down. So I usually do it from the back first and press, flip to the front, and make sure that none of the fabric rolled into the seam. And that'll lay nice and flat and give you a nice sharp point right there in the middle. And let's just see. Do this, it will still nest for you because that's going up and that's going down. But this will just give you less bulk in that middle and make the block flatter. Either way you press them is fine. That works both ways. So we're going to go ahead and press the rest of these. So again, flip it on the back, separate the seam, press it. This is one of the few times I press from the back. You're usually pressing from the front so you don't get fabric rolled in, but then I do flip it over and give it a good press on the front. And that'll give you perfect 4 patches. The flatter your seams are on the back, the flatter your quilt top will lay, the easier it will be to quilt and the more square it will come out in the end. So pressing is always a really good thing to look at and practice and see how can you get your seams to be flat with little bulk. So sometimes we'll press seams open, sometimes we press to the side, but The patterns will sometimes tell you how to press, but I always think it's better to learn the proper way to press, and then you decide when you're making your block which way you want it to go. And there we go. All of them are done. So then these will be ready to sew into rows at the end after we get all our other blocks done. So next up is the quarter square triangles. Okay, so block 2, we've done block 1 and 2. These are those guys. So block 3 and 4 are quarter square triangles that look like this. And when you're dealing with 2 and 2 that match, there's one way to do it. But when you have 3 or 4 different fabrics, in this case we have 3, we cut the triangles on the bias and just piece them. And so you're working with bias triangles, so I'm going to walk through how to do these. First you'd have an 8 1/4 inch square that you saw we cut them across both diagonals. So now these are 8 1/4 inch triangles. So you put them right sides together and you aligning the right angle, not the long side, and you just sew 1/4 inch. And I find it much easier to start at the right angle and work to the point. I do know some people prefer to do it this way, but if you've never done it and you're trying it the first time, try the right angle first and see if you like it. So we're going to sew the white to the yellow and the white to the red. And then to press these, we're going to press to the dark or press to the color. And they're biased, which means they're very stretchy and can distort. So when you go to iron these, I use the side edge of my iron and I press it into the seam. And you'll notice I don't go out to the edge. I'm just pressing this area. And same thing for this one. The other thing is when you line these up to sew them, you want to line up these 2 edges. And if this edge is a little bit shy, follow the outer edge. But if you were to align the right angle of the triangles, and so you're going to have a much more accurate square, even if it's a little bit off here. And again, that's bias. It happens when you cut them. But understanding the engineering of the block is going to help you have a more accurate block, whether you cut the pieces accurate or not. So align the right edge, sew the 1/4 inch, press it open to the dark. Only use the edge of your iron and the seam. Do not go out to either edge. And now we have these 2 to sew together. And how you align these, they should nest because we've pressed that one to the left, this one to the right, is you align this outer corner. And again, align this edge and this edge. And you can see on mine, I'm a little bit off. My yellow doesn't go all the way out. I'm not going to worry about it. I will just sew here, and when I flip it open, it will be a square. So here's this. It's been aligned. And then we're going to press this. And how I would do these, you can, if you're just starting, you could just press it to one side. You'll have a little bit of bulk there. But I've decided to go ahead and press these seams open, and I'm going to show you how to do that. To press the seams open, I use a strip stick. We sell these in 18 inch and 9 inch. And you put that on your surface. You lay the piece wrong side up with the seam sticking up. And you can, I use a purple thing just to open the first part and finger press it. And then you take the nose of your iron and ride it along the stick. And you can pinch over here to keep the seam standing up as you go. Sometimes you need to do it and it fights you, and sometimes it'll just pop open without needing to pinch it. And there's my seam pressed open. Remove the stick. And I'm just going to press this. Now this is really flat and there's no extra bulk there in the center. Either way will work with this one because there's not a lot going on, but I think pressing this to the color, and that open is going to give me the cleanest and flattest block. So once we've done that, we have them all done. And we need to clip our dog ears. So you can trim them up with a square ruler. These should measure 8 inches, or they're going to finish at 7.5, so they should measure 8 inches. Or you could take a sharp pair of scissors, and I stack up like 5 of them. That's just an arbitrary number, however many you feel comfortable cutting. Okay, and then I just take the scissors and make sure that the corner I'm ready to cut is aligned. They're all lined up correct. And this is just a quick and fast way to get rid of them. There we go. And then when I move to the next corner, again, I square them up. You would think they'd all be aligned, they never ever are, so you just line them back up for each corner. And just take the scissors and snip those off. You want to get rid of the dog ears, and they're called dog ears because they look like a little dog ear. Because when you're quilting, your machine will hit that and it'll cause it to catch and jump, and then it can mess up your quilting design. So you want to, oops, I missed one. You want to get rid of those excess. It'll just give you a cleaner looking quilt. There we go. And so we'll just trim these off and we'll be ready to start the next block. So for the next section of the quilt, we need to make some half-square triangles. We're doing it with the traditional method of putting 2 squares right sides together. And these are 5 7/8. And you would normally draw a line from corner to corner and then sew a 1/4 inch on either line. That is the traditional method. That's the way the pattern is written. I like to mark them a little differently in the studio, and you can do it either way. So let me layer these guys up here. And you'll always, there's all kinds of ways to do half-square triangles. I did a video on 4 different ways in our Dutch Wonderland sew-along. We write the pattern traditionally, so you don't have to have a ruler, a specialty ruler, or have any trim up. Usually we do things to measure exact. And this method is another way to do it, so it measures exact, but we do use a ruler for it. So now that we've got everything right sides together, I mark them for their half-square triangles. And how I do that is I use a ruler. In this case, I am using the Creative Grids non-slip multi-size 6-inch Flying Geese and 45 90-degree triangle ruler. We do have these on our website. It is a ruler I use for all kinds of things. Half-square triangles are just one of them. They do Flying Geese, 1/4 square triangles. I could go on and on. But I love to use this ruler to mark my half-square triangles. And how I do it is I use the base, for this one, because it's so big, I'm using a horizontal dotted line, and I'm aligning the bottom of the square. And I'm using the vertical, or the diagonal dotted line, and I'm aligning that with the 2 points on the triangle. Make sure you get it where you want it. And then I use a washout pen, this is a Frixion pen, and I mark a line. And then I flip this over and I mark a second line. And if you've already cut your squares for half-square triangles, which I have, this is a great way to mark them. Another way you could use this is you could have cut 5.5-inch strips and cut your triangles right from the strip. And that's in another video, so we're not to confuse you, we're just going to do it this way. But now what I've done is these 2 lines I've drawn are actually my sewing lines. So I don't have the line in the middle where I have to sew a 1/4 inch away. And you can see how accurate They are a 1/2 inch apart all the way down. So this is also another way to check yourself to make sure that it's even and will match out right. So again, dotted line on the bottom or a solid line, whichever works. But you're using a horizontal line on this side of the square, and I'm using the diagonal line on the ruler from corner to corner. And then I draw my line, flip, and repeat. Okay, and then the last half-square triangle is this guy, and he is made from a 7 7/8 inch square. My ruler won't work, so we're going to do it the more traditional way. I'm going to use a ruler with a 45-degree line marked on it. And we're going to use 45-degree line on the bottom of the square, and we're going to use the 1/4 inch line to go point to point, not the edge of the ruler. So the 1/4 inch line is going point to point, and then I'm drawing a line a 1/4 inch away. That's why we did that. And then we'll repeat on this side. 45, 1/4 inch line, and now you have your sewing lines on those. So we're going to go ahead and sew these, and then we'll be back to show you how to do the last couple blocks. Alright, so here's a quick way. We have our half-square triangles sewn. So here's the half-square triangles. There's 2, 1 on each side. We have to cut them apart. So what I do is I use a line on my cutting mat, and I put the point of the square on the line, and I stack these up. And that way I can cut a bunch of them at once without having to sit here and cut individual ones. Because again, this is a seam allowance, so you want it to be approximately a 1/4 inch, but it's on the inside of your quilt. You're never going to see it. So we've got those lined up. Take the ruler, put the 1/4 inch line on the sewn line on this side. And you can fudge it if you need to, if something shifts. And then we just cut. But now I have all of my half-square triangles. So the next step is to press it open. Okay. Then we clip our dog ears, and again you can stack them and do them all at once, but I want to show you the next block. So the next block is this guy with one of these sewn here and one of these sewn here, and then one of these will get sewn on here, and one of these will go on here. And that's the next block. So I'm going to get all these pressed and trimmed, and then I'll sew this out as a step by step and come back and show you it. Alright, so here is our last pieced block, and this is how that one goes together. We did our half-square triangles. We then sew one of the small white triangles on the bottom. And to sew this, I did start with the square on top and sew down. And then you press this one open. Again, just in that seam. So there's that one. Then once we've done that, we will sew a second small triangle on the other side of the green or the yellow. So the white triangles go to the green or the yellow. And we're going to go ahead. This time we've sewed with the triangle on top and sewed down. And we press. And we have this dog ear here to trim, and the other ones we trim with scissors, but this one has actually got a seam that's going to go through here. So to do this, you take a ruler and you align the 1/4 inch line with where the white and the green meet. And you can trim off those dog ears, but you don't want to worry about anything down here or down here, because again, it's a bias triangle, it can stretch out. We just are taking care of where the seam is going to go through. So just that little bit, and now I have a perfect 1/4 inch seam, and I got rid of the dog ears. So we trim that one. Then we're ready to sew a blue triangle onto the one side. So that's this one. Okay. And we're going to press this open. Now note, I started here at the end where I aligned the 2 triangles exact, and I sewed out here, and it is not going to intersect here. It's way over here, and that's okay. It's supposed to be like that. And then we press towards the larger triangle. And then we sew the second triangle on, and this time the 1/4 inch seam starts where those two, the blue straight line and the blue triangle meet. And we sew that out, and this matches at this end. And then we press this open. And that makes our last block in the quilt. There are 5 green and 4 with the yellow. And this top one we're going to trim the same way. We're going to add the 1/4 inch, put the ruler on here, and you're going to trim just that little bit. And that is that block. So now that we have all our blocks together, I'm going to finish trimming these up, and then we'll be back to sew the blocks into the rows. So once we had all our 4 patches together, we need to now sew them into 2 rows of 5 of each block. And now we need to press these seams open, and we're going to do them the same way we did these. You're going to push them apart and just press from this side, and then we'll turn it over and press it from the other side to make sure we didn't roll any fabric. And that will keep all of these seams nice and flat with very little bulk in the middle. Okay, so then once you press all of those, you just flip it over and make sure none of the fabric rolled in the seam and that everything is flat. And you're going to make 2 rows of these. This is row 1. And the next thing is to sew these together. And again, it's 5 and 5. And we're going to create another row like this where it's green, blue, yellow, red, green, blue, yellow, red. And then we'll be back to press those. So now we have the 1/4 square triangles done. And this one's a nice easy one. We can just press them all in one direction. So I start on top, I lift up the excess row, and I use the edge of my iron into the seam and just work my way down the strip, and that guarantees no fabric gets caught in the seam and that it just lays flat for me. Okay, so that's that row. So there was 2 of those we did. Then the next row is these large triangle blocks sewn together, 5 of the green pink ones. And these, I would recommend pressing these seams open versus to one side because there is some bulk there. Now if you don't want to press them open, it's not a lot of bulk, you could just press it to one side. But for my purposes, I'm going to press it open. I'm using my strip stick again. Just pop in the seam, tip of my nose of my iron into the seam, and just press it down the stick. So with the stick, it really is a piece of cake. It goes so much faster than trying to just do it flat. Okay, so there's that one. And I did find it was easier to start sewing up here at the top versus starting down here. So this helped me get my points aligned much better than if I started at the bottom and sewed it up. And you can see these all look really good. This one I sewed from the bottom up and it is a little off. Not enough for me to worry about, but it's a little bit off. So start at the top and work your way down. And so I'll press the last row and then we're going to piece the actual print fabric, and I'm going to go over that real quick. We're on to piecing these long strips. Unfortunately, these are directional prints that only run with the fabric, so we do need to piece this as well as all these strips in between. So all the strips except for the large balloons, how we're going to sew them is with a diagonal seam, and this is in the pattern as well. And how you do that is you take one strip right side up, horizontal, one strip right side down, going vertical, and overlay them so there's a right angle. And then you sew from the upper left to the lower right, and you'll press it out to get a diagonal seam. So it will look like this. And you just trim the excess away, leaving a 1/4 inch seam, and you press this open. And the reason we do this is because a diagonal seam, it's easier for your eyes to skip over it when you look at the pattern versus a straight seam that always just looks like a break. So whenever possible, we use these diagonal seams. So that is how we're going to do the bubblegum and the white confetti. And we're going to do these balloons. But I want to show you on the balloons, they are directional. So make sure you start with the bottom strip going up, and then I take the next strip, make sure it's going up, and then I put it on here, so it's going to go right to left. And I always just flip it up to make sure I have the direction right, because you could do this and then half your balloons are upside down. So it doesn't take much to just flip it up to make sure they're going the right way. You can pin this and then sew from upper left to lower right, and you'll have those done. So that's how those will be sewn. And then we come to these big balloons. Now we can do a diagonal seam across this, but I think what's going to happen is that seam is just going to be really unsightly because of the width of this strip and the size of the print. So you could do a straight seam on this, and in this case I think that's going to make it most visually pleasing. You could even go so far as to cut this strip in half and piece it on either side, which is what I think I'm going to do, so you don't have a seam going right down the middle of your quilt. So I'm going to still use a straight seam, but I'm going to cut this, and if you're not good at freehand, use a ruler. Mine is buried. And then I will sew this on this end and flip it open. And sew the other one on the other end, and that way the seams are off to the side. They're not right in the middle of my quilt. So that's how you piece the big pieces of fabric. So once we get those pieced, we're able to start building our quilt. And how you can do it, you can start at the top. You could just start at the top and work down. You could go through and sew the confettis, the bubblegum strips to these rows and these rows. But how I like to do it is I start in the center. I'm going to sew these two on either side of the gumballs. Then I will sew the 2 confetti strips, then the 1/4 square triangles. That way I can pin and sew 2 rows at a time, and I'm building out versus from the top down where I'm just pinning 1 row on at a time. The first row you have to do one and then the other, but then the next rows, it's wide enough. You could just pin the first strip on, pin the bottom strip, go to the machine, sew it, turn it, sew it. It'll go together much quicker that way. So I'm going to go ahead and get our rows put together, and then I'll show you the finished top before it's off to the quilter. Let's cue the confetti for our ticker tape parade quilt top. It is all done. It is big. It's a very big one. It's perfect for a twin size bed for a happy birthday or to celebrate. But we've got it all put together now. It's all pieced by horizontal rows. And I hope you've enjoyed our tutorial on this guy. And stay tuned, we'll show you what it looks like when it's all quilted. Here is our ticker tape parade quilt all finished and back from the quilter. Monica Chrome quilted this. Again, this one is featuring Cue the Confetti from Hoffman Fabrics. It was a very fun quilt to make. It's a great one if you're an advanced beginner just kind of starting out. If you want to introduce yourself to quarter square triangles and half square triangles and 4 patches and chain piecing. It kind of has a little bit of everything in it. It's perfect for any kind of celebration, birthday, anniversary, wedding, just because celebration. So, and it's a big guy. He's a pretty big quilt. But let me zoom in here so you can see what he looks like. She quilted stars and streamers all over it, which is perfect for the theme. And it just gave it some movement. We do all over on a lot of these quilts just because we're doing so many of them. But you could also do each row as a separate type of quilting if you want to practice different patterns. So I hope you have enjoyed our Ticker Tape Parade quilt tutorial. And I want to thank you for watching. And if you've liked our quilt tutorials, make sure you like and subscribe below. And again, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find the Whimsical Workshop on our website, thewhimsicalworkshop.com, and that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.